Welcome to the Carnivore Cast, a podcast focused on the carnivore diet and lifestyle, with practical advice from successful carnivores, citizen scientists, and top researchers. I'm your host, Scott Meslinski, and I'm here to speak with experts and experienced carnivores to get answers to your biggest and meatiest questions while helping you live your best life as a carnivore. If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting the Carnivore Cast on Patreon. By becoming a patron, you'll help us reach more people and continue to create content on carnivore. There are also exclusive perks available, such as private Q&As, consultations with me, and more. Become a supporter at patreon.com/carnivorecast. Check the episode description for the link. Thank you, and I'll see you there. This episode is brought to you by Electrolytes. We know that salt, potassium, and magnesium are essential minerals, especially for those on carnivore, keto, and low-carb diets to relieve hunger, dizziness, cramps, headaches, and keep so many of your bodily processes running optimally, including sleep, brain and mental health, hormonal health, your heart, immunity, and more. Electrolytes are convenient, evidence-based, and delicious. My wife and I have been using LMNT for years, every single day. They're great for fueling hard workouts, getting adapted and beating keto flu, fasting, traveling with them, and kickstarting your day with energy. They're used by Navy SEALs, Olympic weightlifters, jiu-jitsu athletes, and everyday people who want to make themselves better, like you and me. They're also founded by superhero Rob Wolf. LMNT is offering free, that's right, free people, LMNT sample packs to Carnivore Cast listeners. All you have to do is pay for shipping. Go to drinklmnt.com/carnivorecast to claim this awesome deal. That's drinklmnt.com/carnivorecast, one word, and I'll include a link in the show notes. Keith McDonald was overweight, unhappy, low libido, and riddled with chronic illness, including celiac, idiopathic thrombocytopenia, purpura, plantar fasciitis, and more before taking his health into his own hands. Keith used carnivore and fasting, and he's been able to lose hundreds of pounds, take control of his life, and relieve many of those conditions without the use of medication. Welcome to the show, Keith.
Thanks, Scott. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, super excited to have you on. Now, your story is a fascinating one, so I'd love to hear you tell it for the audience and for me as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So just so the audience knows, Scott and I were talking a little bit before. I do tend to sometimes overtalk, I guess, because I'm overly passionate. If there's such thing of health, now that I regained my health back from wherever it was. It never was really there. So to correct you a little bit, and I will on that one thing, because it was pretty hard. ITP, some people may know it as, or idiopathic thrombocytopenia purpura. So idiopathic basically means we have no idea. Thrombocytopenia purpura is a reference meaning your platelets drop to, well, pretty low. In my case, it went to nearly zero, and that was back in 20. Really, what happened is in 2013. I think it's something that existed all my life. We just happened to capture it in that moment. And what happens is you break out in this weird, I call it the grimace rash, or the medical term is called petechiae, and you get these little purple dots all over your body. I used to call it this weird stress rash. So anyway, that's enough about that. So let's go back. So where I really want to take this, Scott, is I have done some other podcasts in the past, and I do tend to talk about my backstory. And I always talk about it the same way. And I thought, you know what, today I don't want to do that the same way. Where I actually want to start today is I want to take people back, and I thought about this. So today I purposely went on a hike. In this beautiful spot in the Okanagan Valley. It's in Canada. It's like just a really nice spot. You can look it up. Maybe put it in the show notes, Scott, of where I live, and we'll get like a massive flood of carnivore people here. What I did, I went out on the mountain because I just absolutely love it out there, because I feel alive. I feel human when I'm out there, and that's why I do it. And I also decided to jump into the lake. It's Canada, so it's cold this time of year, of course. And, for cold dips, little side note, you don't need to go very long. I don't need to sit there for 20 minutes, 3 minutes. That's plenty. Gives a nice little reset. So let's do reset. So we're back in the year 2011. I would say this is where it really started for me, Scott. Trip to Mexico. And one of the excursions was going to this temple, the Koba temple. And what really brought me back to this moment today was actually looking where did my life actually turn and change? Of course, leading up to that, I was the big guy all my life, or that's what I was called. Or some people, derogatory terms, would call me penguin because I always had this waddle when I'd walk just because I was so big. I look back, it's like, why? Really? What? Anyway, long story short, go on this excursion up Koba. I'm really excited to go up to this temple because it's like the only temple in all of Mexico that you could climb. And you know what, Scott, happened to me?
What?
I climbed up this temple and I only got maybe 10% of the way. I just completely gassed out. I was a really big guy. I have some pictures of it. And I can remember I take myself back and my thighs were chafed because I was wearing shorts too small because my ego was too big to buy shorts that actually fit. I didn't want to fit in, say, I was size 46 pants. I didn't want to buy a size 46 shorts. I wanted to buy the size 44. Well, they'd ride up my legs and it felt awful. And my wife, who was at the time my fiance, or no, I guess let me correct that. She was my wife at that time. I climbed up that mountain, or the temple, and I couldn't make it. It was the first time I realized, like, I can't do this. My body physically can't do it. I'm out of shape. What is actually going on? And I never lost that moment where I'm just standing there. I'm overlooking the forest because I'm probably maybe 20 feet above the trees, and looking up, I could see everybody else is like enjoying it. I couldn't enjoy it. So that experience, that story, I couldn't physically do. And it really took me to different moments in my life. And I wanted to share that I have these moments where I can remember as the big guy. I don't know. Are you allowed to say the word fat in podcasts, or do you get in trouble?
Sure. No, go for it.
Okay. I had these moments where I was fat and I really didn't enjoy it. Like all my life, I just absolutely despised being overweight, being fat, whatever you want to call it. And sorry, people, I like to say the word fat because we're in this world of social media where that term is actually banned and you get kicked off social media if you say that, which boggles my mind. Anyway, let's move forward past that. And 2013, so this is 2 years after that moment of realizing what is going on and just trying to figure out ways to fix myself. 2013, I had that crazy episode of the ITP that I like to call, or idiopathic thrombocytopenic purpura, the low platelets, which is a blood condition. Look up platelets. Everybody has Google out there. I'm sure they can look it up. That was a moment that I actually discovered I had celiac. And I was like, okay. So the point that I bring this up to everybody is you have to be your own self-advocate. What they wanted to do to me in 2013 was actually kind of unbelievable, really, and seems to be a common practice, which was remove my spleen, because my spleen collected all my platelets and it was like 3 times the size of normal. They didn't know what was going on. And the fix at the time was to remove my spleen, not to actually figure out what the heck was going on. In my mind, I wanted to figure out what was going on. And I did. I took 2 weeks off. And that is when I actually found some research. I found some links between gluten and other issues related to ITP. And I just said, okay, maybe there's something here with the gluten. So I stopped it and I actually found this diet. So this is the start of my carnivore. This is where I think carnivore transitions for me. And the actual name of the diet is the specified carbohydrate diet. Have you heard of that one, Scott?
Yeah, it sounds really familiar.
Yeah, some people will call it the Scd diet, or it's also called in the autism world, the GAPS diet. That's where GAPS gets its information from. And that was when I really learned that nutrition what you eat actually does play an effect on your body. And I actually believe that it did. And believe it or not, I was one of those people that thought the CICO method, the calories in, calories out, is actually true. And I remember back in the day, I would like potato chips, and I would count them in as my calories because I could. So I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, I'll include potato chips, or I'll include like whatever I wanted because it was part of my macro count. Little did I know that it's actually not true. And I commented today on someone's social media that, one thing that I'll say that some people, and why I think carnivore or keto gets a bad rap, is a lot of people or certain people in this space like to vilify carbs and all carbs. And I was one of those. I'm not anymore. I think that there is a time and a place for it, for sure. But me personally, it's not. And that's kind of sidetracking now. I'll get to that in a second. But really, that diet is what propelled me to restriction. And we talk about restriction. And one of your guests, maybe you can remind me who it was. He said to me, I felt like he said to me, he said to you, I guess, in the podcast, he said, this diet is actually the least restrictive diet I've been on.
Mm.
Who was that?
I'm not sure exactly.
It was one of your guests. I'll go back in my history.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people have found that to be true, but yeah, that's very well said.
100% it's the least restrictive. And I'll tell you why. Because I used to print off this list of what I can eat, what I can't eat. And it was so complicated just to make one simple thing work. And that was to eat plants into my diet and figure out, why aren't I digesting food? Oh, I'm not digesting this today. Oh, maybe tomorrow it'll work. And it just became so complex and so frustrating. For years, this went on.
Thanks to Bioptimizers for sponsoring the show, and I'm really excited to tell you guys about an excellent deal they're offering this November. This is the biggest blowout deal they will be offering all year, so if there's a time to stock up, it is now. What they're offering is over $200 worth of free gifts and a huge discount all month long on their Magnesium Breakthrough products. Their Magnesium Breakthrough is a full spectrum magnesium supplement that includes 7 unique forms of magnesium for stress relief, better sleep, and mental health, all in one bottle. They're offering all sorts of awesome free gifts and products worth over $200 with select purchases. All month long, they're offering 10% off using my unique code. And you can only get this exclusive deal through my link, special for you listeners. You won't find it on Amazon or even the Bioptimizers website. Go to magnesiumbreakthrough.com/carnivore and use code carnivore to get your discount and free gifts today. Thanks so much and have a great day.
And I didn't know. I thought, maybe, am I doing something wrong? Am I eating too much? Am I not eating enough? What actually is the answer? And I think the answer is, nobody really knows what the answer is. That's what it is. I hate when people say static and say, thou shalt eat this, or you must eat that, and don't eat that. I don't think that that's necessarily true for every person on the planet. I do think that one thing I would like to change for myself is I'm kind of getting out of this labeling of calling myself even a carnivore. I call myself a human. And there's a couple people out there that you'll probably know, make reference to, is they call it the proper human diet. And that's what I call this. I call this carnivore, or whatever you want to call it, keto. I don't really care. It's a name beyond just diet. I thought I used to really get into this diet world and this cycle of change and this cycle of losing weight so much. It was just like this vicious cycle that just never stopped. And I didn't know why am I losing weight? And then I would stop. And then it was like, what is actually happening? And, carnivore, here's what happened with me in the carnivore, because this is Carnivore Cast, of course. Most of my weight, so this is fast forwarding now, we'll fast forward way up to 2019. So a few years, of course, I was a yo-yo dieter. Like many of the people probably listening to this podcast, maybe they still are. And I really, in 2019, I had this moment it wasn't so much. I was caught into fasting because I'm a big faster. I'm a huge proponent of fasting. I would say that fasting, I would even go as far as Scott saying fasting saved my life. And 2019 July is when really my transformation changed. I was very paleo. I did this diet called Autoimmune Paleo just because I was tired. I was tired of being sick, and I had this switch. I call it my switch moment where I can actually remember it. It was Friday. I'm pretty sure it was a Friday. Yeah, it was a Friday because I was at my friend's for barbecue, and it was just like this moment where I was just like, I had enough. Like, this is enough. I ate this hamburger of all things, and it's kind of ironic because I'm carnivore, but it was a hamburger filled with wheat. And as a celiac or whatever you want to call me, a gluten intolerant, they labeled me celiac. Fine, I don't really care. But anybody who's actually had the flu might be able to relate to this experience. If you get the flu, you just feel like crap. And you get that for like a few weeks. And that's what the feeling from gluten was for me, that went on for a good decade. It was just this nasty feeling that you'd always get. And that day that I just had that moment that I had enough of this. And how I stopped was really fasting. The diet, sure, of course it helped me out because I was eating paleo. I was eating somewhat healthy, very whole foods, no processed junk coming into my system. And my body was just thriving on it. And it was thriving because I wasn't eating every 2 to 3 hours like they tell you that you should. And within 4 months of me fasting and getting onto this new health journey that I didn't realize what was actually happening, it's kind of like thrown into stardom all of a sudden. And I lost all this weight. And I actually went for my periodic blood work because I had low testosterone for a long time, since I was like 26. And I just went in casually to go get it checked. Yeah. Go get it checked because I was androgel off and on most of my life because I hated androgel and testosterone. It just made me feel like the Incredible Hulk or Jekyll and Hyde. And I didn't like doing that. I'm a family man. I'm a father of 2 kids. And I didn't like being miserable like that. So to my surprise, so July, August, September, October, so probably November, I actually had blood work done. And my testosterone for the first time in 15 years shot up normal high.
Wow.
Right. So I was just like, this is crazy. Like I didn't really understand what's going on. I didn't start fasting for the weight loss because I was just acceptance of my weight. I was in that phase where lots of people you hear about, they get to a point where they just give up and they're just like, yeah, you hear this fat acceptance community. I was in that. I was to the point where I thought, okay, I'll just be big all my life. That's totally okay by me. And fasting really is when it kind of went. And then after that, testosterone, I was like, okay, there's something to this. So then I started digging really deep into the social media, into the Facebook. I didn't get into Instagram yet at that point. And that was when I discovered more about Fung, because for some reason, I work in computers, and you'd think that would be the first place I'd look is social media and like groups, but no, of course not. I just read the books. Primarily, Dr. Jason Fung is what I read, and following different protocols for him. And then I just immersed myself in this social media. I'll call it a world because to me it was a whole new world. It just totally different people. So when 2020 hit, it was January, and of course, it was my first real experience feeling somewhat healthy. I was a little bit over 200 pounds at that time. When I started, Scott, I was 200, I think 87 or 89 pounds, give or take a couple pounds, who cares?
Wow.
And by January, February, I think I was 213. And that's when I went down to Mexico for a trip in February. So this is all pre COVID stuff. Hopefully you're allowed to say that. I don't know. I don't know if there's any
Yeah,
rules.
it's fine.
Don't worry about it.
So pre that, it's when I went to Mexico. I realized, okay, this is great. I was actually really, really cold, and I didn't understand why I was so cold. In Mexico, I was actually wearing a winter toque, and I brought my winter jacket and I was wearing it like on the beach. Like who does that? That's not healthy. So I knew that there's obviously something wrong with me to have to wear a winter wool hat in Mexico when it's like 25, 30 degree weather. That's just not normal. So anyway, when I got back from that trip, of course, all hell broke loose and the world just went on lockdown. Well, for me, it was, I'll say it was kind of good because I immersed myself into this health space, like to a point where I just learned everything and downloaded. I'd done keto in the past, and that's when I went full out keto. And I said the heck with carbs in my head and went on this low carb kick for, I would say, a good year. And then in 2021, fast forward to January, I made another commitment to myself. So I guess that's this year. And I was like, I got to do more. So what else can I do? So after keto, March happened, and a perfect transition because carnivore. I was like, you know what? I'm going to up my game a little more, because here's what happened to me. I was still having health issues. And whether it's IBS, which it could be, definitely irritable bowel syndrome, where you go to the bathroom a lot. I don't know if you've actually experienced that before, but I would sometimes, I'm not kidding, 5 to 10 times a day bowel movement, or I would have to poop. Yeah, I did. I said it on the Bristol chart. It was not good. So I wanted to change it. Scott, it's wrong when you turn around, you look in the toilet and you can see your broccoli. That's not normal. And I wanted to make a change. And I was like,
Yeah.
this ain't right. Like, what is happening? I'm eating keto. I'm eating perfectly everything that I could possibly think of, yet my digestion is still wrong. So we have these space of people out there, and I used to let it bother me. I guess it still kind of does, irritates me a little bit. And they're like, oh, you only eat meat. That ain't healthy. Well, do you think it's healthy to poop out whole florets of broccoli? I don't think so. So that's really what I wanted to do, is change my digestion so I could feel better, because I was still feeling dizzy. I was still feeling like these little hangry moments. Like my poor wife, I don't know how the heck she didn't leave me, because I was still miserable. I was still dealing with that fact. I still had these like moments of time I didn't know what was going on. I was still dealing a little bit with depression as well. Even though my diet was so-called refined with keto and with fasting, I still had problems. And I wanted to understand at a deeper level what is actually going on. And in the keto space, there's so many things out there. You can go to the store, you go to Costco now, it seems there's a keto aisle and everything's labeled with keto. So you automatically assume, oh, it's keto, it must be healthy, or, oh, it's gluten-free, it must be healthy. But that stuff was riddled. Little did I know until I started learning about carnivore. It's riddled with the polyunsaturated fats, or the seed oils, the vegetable oils, the stuff that's highly processed, and it is not good for your cell membrane. I'm not going to get into that. I'm not a dietitian. I have my own thoughts on that, but I second that I started avoiding that and became into carnivore when I first started, it was March of this year. And the first 2 weeks, I hated it, but I didn't get the carnivore diarrhea that a lot of people talk about. I actually got the opposite. And I was worried. There were times I'm like, what is going on? I'm not pooping. Because for me, it was normal to go to the bathroom 4 to 10 times a day. That was normal. So the second that I'm like, okay, I'm not going to the bathroom anymore. What is going on? There's got to be something wrong with this. So of course I research it. No, there's nothing wrong. That's normal. That's what it does. That's what happens, because health starts in the gut, and my gut was definitely wrecked. And I actually had a scare too, because kind of my own thing. I made an appointment with the doctor because I'm like all about fixing my health. And I just wanted to get another scan of my liver. So I'm like, oh, I want to make sure that I have no fatty liver because it doesn't show up in blood anymore. But on scan, it did show up previously. And I wanted to get a scan. Well, it didn't show up. Okay, great. But it was quite the scare because I had this incidental, they found something on my pancreas. So I don't know if you're familiar with Steve Jobs, Scott?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So pancreas, you go right to your head. It's like, oh my God, I'm dying. So of course I had, this is not good. What did I do to myself? What did fasting do? Of course I crashed and I was just all worried, and I paid for this MRI privately. And, it turns out I actually had nothing. And when they scanned my liver, it's working beautifully. There's actually no issues at all under an MRI scan with any of my digestive tracts. So everything is running like a hot dam. And I'm just like, where was this the whole time? And I hear these moments, and I talk about that switch moment. And, I was on my hike today, Scott. You know what I was thinking?
What?
I was thinking, this is a Raw moment. Do you remember Raw? Do you know who that is?
No.
Raw. So have you seen Mowgli, the Jungle Book? Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Do you remember when he was in the tree in the cartoon and he was stuck in this trance by the big giant snake?
Yeah.
That's how I feel like. That's what I feel like happened to me. I was stuck in this trance. Like, what is going on? And these crazy foods that these companies make because they're allowed to, they get away with it, which is a whole nother ball game, where it's so hyper palatable that it screws with our hormones, in particular dopamine. So we just want more. And we're just like, more. You want this more. Like, there's a book that I have yet to read. I do want to read it, called The Molecule of More. Why do you want more? It's the same thing as social media, the social dilemma. We go into social media, we want more likes and click, look at me. It's the same thing with food. These companies have found a way to get the food to get us to get more. And that's what they do. It's hyper palatable food. And how you mix it is you mix it with all the junk, particular the vegetable and seed oils. They just make it taste like, I hate to say it on this podcast, but it tastes damn good.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Sure.
Why does this taste so good? I've never heard, I was thinking like along lines too, was I actually addicted to this stuff? And I have to go back and say, I don't think so. I think what actually happened is these companies have figured out a way, whether it's knowingly or unknowingly, perhaps it's like these subliminal messages that you remember that, the subliminal messages on commercials?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they banned it. They banned it because people were making these decisions without even knowing it. Yet here we are, we have government policy allowing these companies to create these massive factory frankenfoods that turn us into Mowgli when he's transformed by the freaking snake that's ready to eat him. And that's how I compare these companies to. There are some companies that do good, don't get me wrong, but when there's highly profit-driven margins in these things, and they're sitting at the board table and getting angry because their profit margins have gone down 5% based on food, that's a problem. You don't see too many people getting rich off vegetables. Yeah, I've never really heard of that. Oh, I'm a farmer's market millionaire? You don't ever see that. Right? You don't see the local beef farmers like drive around in their Porsche or their Cadillac. Who you do see, though, is you see the people at the board table of those rather large companies. And there's a particular company, Bayer, that certainly has a big hand in all of this. Guess who they bought? Monsanto, which is a whole nother story. That's a whole nother podcast that I'm sure there's some people out there would just love to go absolutely crazy.
I don't want to go
But
too far down the rabbit hole with this
Don't
stuff.
let me. Yeah, don't let me.
No. It's very interesting, but I want to center it back to you, Keith.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit? One thing you talked about in a recent Facebook post is like some of the promises and things you made to your wife and your family. Can you talk about how like your being unhealthy and being sick was affecting them, and then how some of these changes through carnivore and fasting have affected those closest to you?
Yeah, 100%. So when you're unhealthy, like so my first daughter, she was born in 2013. Second was 2015. And one of the things that one of my biggest whys is actually my daughters, but one of them happens to be my youngest daughter. And I really focused on a commitment that I heavily focus on is she was born with a host of health issues where some people may have heard of it, called sacral agenesis. And it's essentially like a deformity, I'll call it. I don't like to say my daughter's deformed, but she's missing half of her sacrum. She has a single kidney, and she has this thing called a lipomyogenesis at the base of her spine. Excuse me, medical people, if I said some of that wrong. She has a tethered cord and a whole bunch of other stuff and recurrent UTI infections. She's 6. She's already had some kidney damage to her single kidney.
I'm so sorry.
And one of the things that I am so hyper focused on and why I have such a passion for my health is, as a father, whether I'm an accepted donor to her physically or not, it's important for me to stay healthy, because in the kidney donor program, they actually have, and I do know about this because I've done my research, is I can donate my kidney to somebody else and they give me their kidney for my daughter. So if she needs that point, where she ever gets to that point, which is possible, God, I hope not, knock on wood, I want to be there for her. And I wasn't able to do that before. So if that means me eating beef and eggs the rest of my life just so I can stay healthy, then I'll do it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
You know, I remember there was times like I don't know how my wife put up with me, because there was times like I was just, especially with this testosterone, like I look back and to one of the houses that we lived in pre-kids, and I remember when I got the prescription for the testosterone and laying on the couch, like pulled my pants down. Hey, here you go. Kind of made a joke about it. Yeah, give me this shot in my ass. Looking back, that was embarrassing. It was an embarrassing moment. I had like zero sex drive. I was depressed. I was taking Viagra just so I could get it up. 26 years old. Like, and a lot of this, Scott, like some of my posts, some people may be like, oh, I'm so sorry you had all these healthcare. I'm mad at the healthcare system. But it's not just the healthcare system, Scott. You know what the problem is?
What's that?
I didn't take ownership of my own shit. So I'm on this thing now, and I would say recently, where you have to take ownership of your stuff. It wasn't the doctors that said to me, hey, Keith, go eat that large giant pizza from the pizza store and then run to a Chinese buffet and maybe go have some potato chips and dips after that. And then 3:00 in the morning, go do a Subway run. I would do that.
Yeah.
Like, does somebody say to do that? No, I chose to do that, probably because I didn't know. For one, I used food as a coping mechanism. I used it for anger, for sadness, for happiness, for everything. And I think that is totally wrong. In all of my fixes looking back, I wish that I could go back in time and tell my past self, stop this. Like, stop trying to find blame, just find a solution. And really, for me, the solution is quite simple. Like, today, I feel happy.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like previously. Like previously, I used to think, oh, I'm happy. Well, yeah, I was happy because I was prescribed antidepressants for a period of time, which is a whole nother story because I ended up being allergic to those things.
Wow.
But it's just crazy. It's nothing drives me more mad than someone saying, oh, well, you can just have a little bit of carbs. It's okay. Have a little bit. Well, no, it's not. I was walking off the, I'll use today too as a perfect analogy. I was walking on the mountain. I'm like, oh, my freaking foot hurts. You know what stopped me? This tiny little pine needle in my shoe. So what? A pine needle can debilitate you and knock you on your ass, but you're telling me you can have a teaspoon of freaking sugar and that's okay?
Yeah.
And in our bloodstream, we have 4 grams of sugar circulated at any one given time. Like, give me a break. I get irritated at that stuff. I like to find root cause problems.
Yeah.
And a lot of the root cause was I ate like crap. And I didn't know because that's a norm. That's a standard American diet. And I think what was it called? This Tufts chart that they come out with where it's ridiculous where cereal is actually better for you according to this chart than fish or beef. Like, have you seen that chart, Scott?
No, that's funny. Yeah.
Look it up. There's actually one of your guests. I think you had Michelle Hearn on at one time. Didn't you?
Yep.
Yeah. So she actually did a funny thing on Lucky Charms being healthier than beef. And it was just like,
that's funny.
what the heck? So put that in the show notes. I thought it was funny. Anyway, not to get off track. I really think that this has changed me for who I am. I'm not the same person that I was a year ago or even a week ago.
Yeah.
And I'm just changing so fast. And one thing that is not really talked about here's a really cool thing that happened to me with carnivore specifically for an NSV. You'll like this one and probably be intrigued by it. Some other guests is a lot of fasters will talk about brain fog being lifted. That's true. But here's what happened to me with a whole nother level with carnivore is I actually had this another level of brain fog that I like to call EQ fog. So are you familiar with emotional intelligence at all, Scott?
Yeah, like emotional quotient.
Yeah.
Perfect. There you go. So EQ. So when I started carnivore, within the first 3 weeks, I had this crazy creative mind just kind of like lift up. Like, okay, there's brain fog of the IQ and you just kind of feel, oh, okay, I feel great. But then with carnivore is a whole new level where I actually start to feel creative. I'm like, wow, what is actually happening? And then all of a sudden, like, I'm like writing, like sometimes I feel like I'm an author. I can write like 1,000 words in like a half an hour of just my thoughts.
Wow.
And it's just like, what is happening? I could read, I've never read so many books in my life. I would say pre-carnivore, I read maybe 5 books in my life, apart from like study books at school. And now I just can't get enough of reading. I probably read 1-2 books a week on average. And
that's amazing.
Retain it.
Yeah. Wow.
Figure that out. Like, there's reading to say, yeah, I read a book in a week, but to actually retain the information and then capture it is a whole nother story. So the energy now that I have, like, is unbelievable. I do find that I did get out of hand though. Here's what did happen to me, Scott. And word of caution for other people is, yes, okay, great. I found my health and I'm morally excited. But I would almost argue that I found it too much and I got too caught up into this being ultra healthy. And I actually, I fell on a hike and I wrecked my back.
Oh. And
I still continued pushing. This was the summer of this year. And I just ignored it. I ignored the pain. I was like, I'm going to ignore this. I got to keep going. It was like, just keep going and just don't stop. And it caught up to me. And just like, I've been dealing with this stupid back injury since. And I would actually say that it's probably one of the best things that's happened to me in my life, where you're debilitated to the bed. You can't move at all. You're just looking at the ceiling and kind of like, oh, you're just in so much pain. But it just brought to me like, why? Like, what is what is my real ultra focus of being healthy? What is the reason that I wanted to go on social media? I couldn't get an answer to that. So I actually did this weird experiment where in August of this year, many of us have probably done this where they're like, oh, I'm not going to go on social media anymore. And I've had these times where, I was taking off my phone, not look at it for like a week or two. But I took it to a step further because I was quite intrigued with dopamine and with hormones and with the way that the digital space is now hacking our hormones, which is a whole nother story. Dopamine, I deleted all my posts, I deleted all my pictures, I deleted all my social media accounts, and I stayed off it for 6 weeks just to have a complete reset while I was injured. And I was like, well, do I go back to it? I don't know. I came back to it because I think that it's important to understand that I control my hormones. I control my emotions. I'm not going to let a company control it, whether that's a company that produces food or whether that's a company that produces digital content for you to go on your phone and scroll up and down 1,000 times. And that's where carnivore comes to me, because I really think that we talk about this being carnivore and people talk about a diet. Well, what about lifestyle? You know, what about actually getting outside and enjoying when the sun sets or when the sun rises? I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but I ran up the mountain just to capture the sun while it was rising. And it's an amazing experience to actually do. So I'm all about experience. I'm all about story now. And how can I live as a better person? Never mind the diet.
Yeah.
I don't care if people frown at me and think that I'm this crazy health nut, because maybe I am, but I have my reasons. They don't know that. Like, do you think that it's fun? Like, people think, oh, well, you only eat beef and eggs. Yeah, of course it'd be great. A pizza would taste great right now. Nothing would love more to do that. But that 2-minute pleasure, I wouldn't even say 2 minutes, that 30 seconds that you put it in your mouth and it's like, it is not worth it. And that's why I go to this carnivore space and I try different spaces of carnivore, the ketovore, the different tiers of carnivore, and I flip back and forth. And that's how I treat it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Sorry to go off.
No, it makes a lot of sense. I think it's finding a sustainable approach for you and something that, to your point, maximizes not only health and well-being, but also your mindset and your mentality. I think you've hit on so many key points. This has been an excellent podcast, Keith. Really appreciate it. Where can folks find out more about you? I know you're not huge on social media, but where can people follow you?
They can follow. You can look me up on Facebook. Is it okay to mention some groups? Is that okay?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so I do participate in a Facebook group called the Fasting Highway.
Okay.
A good friend of mine, his name is Graham Curry. I'm in there. I'm in the larger group, the Jason Fung group. I do a lot of posts in there. And then I think where you found me, Scott, is Mark Stroh's group.
Yep.
On Facebook. So
Mark's Health and Nutrition.
Great.
That's right. He amazing person. Like very, very humble man. I recommend people to go look at those groups. I said, find me there. I am on Instagram. I do maybe trying to post just little stuff in there. Just, I don't know, get followers, whatever that means. But my Instagram is pretty simple. It's _ Keith McDonald.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again for the time today, Keith. This has been wonderful and really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott.
If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting the Carnivore Cast on Patreon. By becoming a patron, you'll help us reach more people and continue to create content on carnivore. There are also exclusive perks available, such as private Q&As, consultations with me, and more. Become a supporter at patreon.com/carnivorecast. Check the episode description for the link. Thank you, and I'll see you there. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Carnivore Cast. If you enjoyed this episode, please review on iTunes. It really helps us out. And share it with a friend. What questions would you like answered, or who would you like to hear from in the carnivore research community? You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at CarnivoreCast, or go to carnivorecast.com. You can also email me at info@carnivorecast.com. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep it carnivore.